This video is brought to you by box.co.uk, Birmingham-based retailer that stocks over 50,000 products that are supplied throughout the UK.
Hi everyone, it's Mo here from Gaming Tools Disconnected, and today I'll be looking at the MSI R9 390X. The R9 390X is a part of the 300 series from AMD, which is their response to the Nvidia's GTX 900 series, with the R9 390X being top of its class. The R9 390X is about £350 in the UK and $430 in the US, which is amazing considering the Nvidia equivalent, the GTX 900 series, is still anywhere between £100 to £200 or $150 to $300 more expensive, depending on where you look obviously. Now, like almost all third-party cards, MSI have overclocked the CPU, which in this case is the Grenada XT chip based on the Hawaii chip, and they have also added their own cooling design to maximise the performance of the R9 390X. Before we get to the review, let's have a quick look at what you get inside the box. Here you will find the power adapter, product brochure, quick start guide, and the drivers and utility CD. The 390X utilises the 5th iteration of the twin Frozer cooler design, which we first saw on the MSI GeForce GTX 980 Gaming 4G. So if you've seen that review, then the 390X Gaming 8G will look very familiar to you. Compared to the GTX 980, the 390X is thicker due mainly to its heatsink and plus the welcome addition of a metal backplate. Measuring at a length of 277mm, width of 129mm, and a height of 51mm, it essentially occupies 3 expansion slots, even though it is technically a 2.5 slot card. Depending on your motherboard, this can become an issue when trying to set up a Crossfire configuration, since this card will block the second PCI Express x16 slot. However, if your motherboard has the x16 slot spaced out, then you should be fine. Alternatively, you could purchase a PCIe extender. Finally, in terms of inputs and outputs, the 390X has a HDMI port, a display port, and 2 DVI ports, but once again we'll talk more about these ports later on. On the opposite side of the I/O ports, we see the heat pipe sticking out along with the heatsink. As we mentioned earlier, the 390X uses a Grenada XT chip, which is based on the Hawaii chip from the 200 series, and it's running on the Mantle architecture. It has a 512-bit memory interface and 2816 Steam processing units. The card is DirectX 12 ready, and according to AMD's own chart, it can utilise AMD 4K resolution support, AMD Infinity, amongst other AMD technologies. As I mentioned earlier, the MSI R9 390X has a backplate, which other than refining the look of the twin Frozer 5 cooler design, benefits the card in a few ways, most notably dissipating heat from the GPU and PCB. Also, as this is a heavier card, due to the thicker heatsink, the metal backplate helps to ensure that the card doesn't sag and it keeps it rigid, all by adding a little weight of its own. While this is likely to never be needed, the backplate also provides extra protection to the PCB should anything drop on it. The extra holes aid in airflow, but they're really to reduce the weight of the backplate without affecting the structural integrity of it. You'll also notice the black MSI dragon printed onto the left part of the backplate, which gives it a very nice aesthetic appeal. The 390X has 2 pieces of accompanying software, the gaming app and the Afterburner app. For those that have used MSI components, you should be familiar with the gaming app. It has a very simple interface with the primary role of adjusting the power of your components. By default, the 390X comes with 3 factory overclocks, which is unlocked thanks to the gaming app. You get 1100MHz OC mode, 1080MHz gaming mode, and the 1050MHz silent mode. This app also controls the backlit MSI logo and dragon that is on the shroud. The second app, MSI Afterburner, lets you have a lot more control over your card when it comes to overclocking. We actually use this app a lot when we want to monitor our systems, even if they aren't MSI products. On a side note, I really appreciate MSI making this app freely available. Another thing that is really handy about Afterburner, especially with the 390X, is that you can manually configure the fan speeds to adjust to the temperature. As we discussed in the MSI GTX 980 review, one of the core features of the twin Frozer design is the silent operation, where the fans won't spin up unless the temperature of the GPU reaches 60 degrees or above. This comes in useful when you're not doing anything intensive with the GPU. However, because the 390X runs hotter, we set the fans to spin much earlier. In regards to display options, the display port is your best choice. With this route, you can connect a 4K monitor at 60Hz, and the HDMI port is limited to 24Hz, which is not great for gaming. Although the heatsink is quite large and the Torx fan run as they should, the card still runs hotter than I'm used to. Under the default configuration, I was idling at 57 degrees Celsius, but with a quick tweak of the fan settings, I was able to bring it down to 33 degrees Celsius, which is a much more preferable temperature. Here are the benchmarks for the MSI AMD R9 390X. From a purely gaming perspective, the R9 390X is really good. It hits the sweet spot for 60 frames per second on a lot of games, including the more recent ones at their highest graphics settings, even on a resolution of 3440 by 1440. If you're restricted to 1080p, the 390X will get well above 30 frames per second on games like GTA 5 and Witcher 3 at their highest graphics settings. However, if you want 60 frames per second at 1080p for these two games, then you may need to bring the graphics settings down to what we refer to as medium settings. Although we can't physically test 4K gaming, we can make an assumption based on our ultra-wide benchmarks. Since the R9 390X could barely reach 30 frames per second on the highest graphics settings for GTA 5 and Witcher 3, then it would be safe to assume that it would have worse performance at 4K. However, for older games and watching films, this card should do fine. Before our final thoughts, I want to inform everyone that we will be benchmarking this card in its Crossfire configuration, so expect to see that video soon. The MSI AMD R9 390X performed admirably with our games. The great performance is made even more impressive when you factor in the somewhat meagre price point, that is, in comparison to other equivalent performing cards. However, there are several things to bear in mind. It does run hot, so you have to adjust your cooling appropriately, such as changing your fans around or adjusting your fan speeds with MSI Afterburner. It is quite thick and essentially takes up 3 slots, so if you want to do Crossfire, you may have to invest in a PCI Express Type-16 extender unless your motherboard has those slots spaced out enough. There is a coil whine, but you may not notice it after a while, or the noise itself may get drowned out by your own fans. Our ultra-wide benchmarks, which we did on the LG 34UC97, show that the R9 390X is very capable of playing games at 60 frames per second or above on high or ultra graphics settings for older games and some more recent games like Shadow of Mordor. The 390X may seem like a no-frills, no-thrills GPU, but it provides you with the most amount of frames per second for as little as possible. For this reason, we are awarding it with the Gaming Tool Disconnected Pro Class Award. We would have given this a higher award, but with the issues we experienced, it wouldn't have merited it, but this GPU still deserves your attention. Thank you everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then please give it a like and share it if you think someone will find it useful. It really helps us out and we're always grateful. If you think there's something we can do differently, then please let us know in the comments below. If you like the content we put up, then please subscribe and be sure to change your subscription preferences to be notified when we upload a video. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Google+. And be sure to check out our other videos. Thanks to box.co.uk for sponsoring this video. If you're in the UK, you should check them out for all your gaming and computer needs. They're a great bunch and they're supporting the channel, so you should definitely check them out. Once again, thank you for watching, and as always, have a good day and I'll see you next time. Bye for now!